Hello and welcome to the Fatboss Guide to Iron Quan, 10-man heroic in the Throne of Thunder.
Hello.
Yes, this fight is actually fairly easy considering it's the 10th boss. We killed it as our 5th heroic boss to kill, so
I think, yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually worth kind of doing fairly early in the tier if you're getting stuck on other bosses. But yeah, it's fairly easy, not too much different, but they've added enough change to actually make it quite fun as well, which is awesome.
Now, if you haven't seen our normal mode guide for this encounter, please do click up on the annotations you see on your screen now. That'll save us some time, as we're not going to really go into in-depth about all the normal mode mechanics, because we're going to assume that you already know them, really. And for this encounter, you want to bring 1 or 2 tanks, 3 healers, and a mixed DPS makeup. It doesn't really matter too much. And the reason why we say 1 or 2 tanks, the only real reason that you need 2 tanks on this fight is because of the Impale debuff. But if you have Paladins available, you can use Blessing of Protection or Divine Shield to completely reset those stacks. And then using Cancel or Macros on the tank, you can just get the boss back immediately without it hitting anyone. You do need 2 Paladins for this to work, and you would need to use Clemency. Unless you're a Paladin tank, in which case you can take Unbreakable Spirit. Now, the encounter still has the 3 Quillen, and the Quillen on Heroic in the first 3 phases, instead of them transitioning once they die, they'll actually transition when they flee, and they'll just run away at around the 25% mark, and then they'll come back later in the fight.
Now what's to note is that when they do leave, is that they do continue having their dots rolling on them, so if you can dot them up just as they leave as well, you can get some extra damage, because they do all return at the end for you to have a big old royal rumble. So if you can get them quite low just by dots, that's quite a cool thing to do.
And the Quillen will also assist each other in the first 3 phases, forcing you to deal with a few new abilities.
So we're going to go through this phase by phase, and we're going to talk about how the new Quillen help each other. And first off, we're going to talk about the Rorschach phase, which is the fire phase. Now, of course, he will still do his AoE pulse on the raid, which you just need to heal it. He still throws his spear, which you just need to avoid because of all the fire lines, which is a massive pain. And of course, he'll still do his Unleashed Flame, which is, of course, if 3 people grouped up, he'll use his energy to throw at you. And of course, you need to do this, otherwise he'll reach max energy and go absolutely crazy, which will just like instantly kill you, which is really bad. So of course you do need to set up groups in order to do this. Now what we did to deal with this is that we got the range to group up at the beginning. We had about 3 or 4 ranged all grouped up at the beginning to take the first 2 stacks of the Unleashed Flame debuff that you get. Then what we got is that we just got our melee to take the last 7 or 8 of them, just using a cooldown rotation. Literally we used Sacrifice, Priest Bubble, but luckily we had a Death Knight and a Rogue, so they have loads of things to cheese it. So especially the Rogue, but the Death Knight of course has AMS, and you can also use Anti-Magic Zone as well, which can help reduce damage. So we just use melee to constantly take these debuffs, so the range can just do what the range needs to do, because there's quite a lot the range does need to do. However, if you don't have this sort of melee composition and you can't really do it like this, you can just do it as you did do on normal, where you just set up 2 different, 3 groups. You had a melee group and 2 ranged groups, and you can do it like that. But the reason that you don't really want the range to stack up is because the lightning guy, our old friend Quetzal, is doing lightning storm on people.
Now obviously with the Lightning Storm it will just stun you, which leaves you in place and you can't receive any healing. And obviously if this is going on a person who's stacked up ready for the Unleashed Flame, there's just going to be a disaster. Like, there's going to be loads of dots going around because of the Arcane Lightning debuff that will spread on people. It's just a mess, so if you can get this melee stack, it's a lot better. So yeah, apart from doing the Lightning Storm, he'll also do something called Whirling Winds, which is a completely new ability. And essentially he'll fly down, he'll target 1 random player, and he'll throw a massive tornado at them. And if they get hit by the tornado, they'll take some damage and also be knocked up in the air. It's not too problematic, literally just move away from it. However, if you are stacked, the chances are it's quite likely that that stack is going to get the tornado thrown at them. And it does get thrown on melee, so the tank, you need to keep your eye on it as well. And the boss has a really nasty habit as a tank. If you get knocked away, the boss will immediately turn around and hit you in the back, which is really horrible. So it's important that you do move away from it regardless of who you are.
Now, because this Whirling Winds does not only knock you up, but it also knocks you back, if you are right in front of all these lines on the ground, it can knock you back into the lines, which is really bad. So do make sure that you're not hit by the Whirling Winds if one of these, if you're right next to a line especially, because you will just take that extra dot, which is something else for the healers to deal with. Now, when the boss is looking at roughly about 35%, you can then move out as they melee group and let his energy stack up, because hopefully you'll get him down to 25% before his energy does reach 100. If it is getting sketchy and something horrible has gone wrong and you haven't managed to do the DPS, just quickly group up and make him so he does use 30 energy very quickly on his Unleashed Flame. Otherwise, yeah, it's very, very simple. And as soon as he does get to 25%, he'll no longer become targetable and he'll just sod off and cry until the end, until the fourth phase. So you just got to do dot him up, because it does reduce his health, and he has got the highest amount of health out of any of the Quillen as well. So the more dots you can get on him just before he leaves, the better.
Now, once you have gotten to 25%, obviously phase 2 will start, and this is where you'll now have Quetzal. He'll still do the lightning storm, so make sure that you're not stacked up, and make sure when the person does get it, you click them very quickly. And obviously when you do have the arc and lightning, make sure you don't go around and spreading it, because it's just unnecessary damage. He'll still do the spear, make sure you move from it. And his main ability that he does is his Windstorm. And the Windstorm hasn't changed, it just seems to do a lot more damage. If you have Paladins here, they're great because of Aura Mastery. This is probably one of the best cooldowns to use here.
Otherwise, Stampeding Roar and
Otherwise,
things like that,
you just have to use Stampeding Roar and just get out as quick as possible.
Now, when I was doing this fight on my Hunter, one time accidentally I disengaged just at the right time, and it does actually make it so you won't be dragged in, but you will be disengaged. So you, in theory, what you can do, you can run all the way to like where you're going to be grouping up afterwards, just before it comes in. And if you disengage just at the right time, you don't even have to deal with the Windstorm. Now, I'm not sure if this works with other classes. It did work with me, even though it was incredibly hard to do. And most of the times, if you muck it up, then you're most likely going to die as well. But if you have an excellent hunter, such as me, or don't laugh. Either way, you can do this to cheese it, which is something. So either Blizz will fix that, or that's something you can do, which is quite
it's something you could try maybe with like mages. You could try Blink. But
Yeah.
either way, even if you can't do something like that, the Windstorm's simple. Just use Aura Masteries, run out with speed increases, don't get picked up by the tornadoes, and obviously once you're on the other side, group up and the fight will continue. Now in this phase, really, you should try and end it before you get a second Windstorm, and the DPS requirement to do that, especially if you're using one tank, it isn't high. It isn't high at all, really.
You'll have your 3 minutes back up just after the first Windstorm anyway, normally. So you should be able to use it then. You don't really need to use your second pot here either, so you can probably save that, especially for the last phase where you're going to have to be, that's where you pop like everything. So yeah, that's something to know. You don't really need to use that, but it's good to use just your 3 minutes here at least. Now the Quillen that is helping in this phase is Damran, which is the Frost guy. Now he has a completely new ability called Frostspike. Now what he'll do is he'll make a very like kind of subtle frost animation on top of you. It's like a little burst of frost, and then after like about a second, these little frost spikes will stick up underneath you. It does very low damage, it just knocks you up, it affects 2 people, and you can move from it if you do notice it, and it just does, it is good to move with it, especially just before Windstorm. If you can move from these, it's very good, because of course you want to be fully topped going into a Windstorm, and he does have a habit of doing it just before. Otherwise he does freeze, which is that debuff on a player, and once the debuff runs out, you'll get hit by the ball that he throws at you, and you do about 100k-ish to the raid. Of course, what you can do, you can use immunities, such as where you can ice block it, or you can also use deterrent, and that will just mitigate the ability. You can do that, it's not highly necessary, but if you notice it is on you, then that's something that you can do, which is, it just helps the healers, especially going in to a Windstorm.
Now once you have got Quet down to 25%, phase 3 will start, and this is when Damren will appear. And Damren this is like the easiest phase, really.
It's a chill out phase as well.
It's a complete chill out phase. You can get your mana back, you can wait for your cooldowns, and you'll understand why in a minute. But yeah, it's a very, very easy phase. The boss will still do his Dead Zone ability, which is where he'll put shields on 2 sides of his body, so either his front or his back, or his left or his right. And obviously you can't do any damage through the shield, so you have to walk around, but the damage in this phase isn't really that important. He still has Frozen Resilience, which is the 10% damage back done to you.
But as you're not doing really any damage, it doesn't even matter, really.
Yeah.
He also does Freeze, which was just explained, that debuff on the player, and you can use your immunities for. And he also does this Spear, which is, of course, move out of the Spear and the lines that come out of it. And, of course, the Tornadoes are still up, and the Tornadoes are trolls, because they're annoying. But in this phase, Rorschach is helping, the fire guy. He's come back after being all cry. He's like, okay, I'm going to help you out for a bit. And he does his Unleashed Flame ability, but he just does it periodically. This will target any 3 people that are stacked up. We use melee for this. However, if there isn't 3 people stacked up, it will just go on a random person. And of course, because it is doing that big burst of damage and it's not split between anyone else, it will most likely one hit you, unless for some reason you have a DR ready for it, even though you don't know it's going to be on you. So do make sure that you have 3 people stacked up, preferably melee, and you want to use this phase also to get rid of your arcing lightning stacks that you're going to have from the lightning phase most likely. You can use it to completely drop those debuffs as well, just to make it easier on the healers.
One thing to note about the Unleashed Flame, he doesn't do it nowhere near as frequent as he does in the previous phase, and your Scorch stacks will actually end up dropping at some point, usually at least. But yeah, he doesn't do it enough for you to really worry about doing some sort of cooldown rotation or anything like that, so you can just have 3 people stacked almost the whole time.
Now, as the next phase is a massive, at this point, like for the next phase, you're going to be using Bloodlust, you're going to be using all your cooldowns, because you need to kill all of the 3 Quillen that come down, but we'll explain that in a minute. So, during this phase, we just call really just to do chill DPS, literally just general low DPS. Like, we get people, if they need to reduce their cooldowns by using abilities such as Shamans with the Force, so they can use their Lava Burst and stuff like that. Otherwise, everyone needs to chill out, because you really need all your cooldowns at this point, especially if you used your 3 minutes on the Lightning Storm. You do need to wait for those 3 minutes to come back up, and your 5 minutes should be coming up roughly at the same time as well.
Now, when you do actually get Damren to 25%, all the other Quillen won't be targetable immediately, which means you might as well just keep DPSing Damren. Damren isn't really like the most important one to die, but because he can die so much more earlier than the other ones, you might as well kill him. And you can have even more DPS time on him by getting him under 25% without actually transitioning him.
You can do this by basically get him to about 28% health, and then as soon as he dead zones, nuke the hell out of him. Pop everything at that point, because he will not transition during a dead zone. Especially, it's very, very important that you don't transition just before a dead zone, because then you're just wasting even more time. If you can get this transition perfectly, I think we got him to about 17 to 16% health-ish before the other ones even came down. So that means that we had all of our execute mechanics up and everything, and it just dropped so fast. It is very, very important. It is, if you can do this, it is well worth it. This is the only reason that you kill Damren, though. Otherwise, he does absolutely nothing. Otherwise, you'll be focusing on Rorschach, which is the fire guy, because he's really the main target you need to kill. The only reason that you do it this way is because you can do this much damage to him.
Now, when the ads do actually appear, the fire guy will still do all of his abilities, which means that you will have the Unleashed Flame, so the melee do need to stack up. The lightning guy will still do his lightning storm, so range need to remain spread. However, you still need to kind of see where each others are, because you do need to 3 people, especially at this moment, because you're going to have Bloodlust up. Now, the boss will no longer do his spears in this phase, because it is like the last phase, and the boss will gain all of his abilities from normal mode, so he'll still like turn the cyclones into fire and frozen ones and stuff like that. But most importantly, he will do his fist smash. And this is why you need to use all your cooldowns here. Not only is the tank getting butchered because he has 4 ads on him, unless you're using 2 tanks, then it's not too much of a problem. But you need to kill as many of these Quillen as possible before the first fist smash, because if you have like the fire guy up, you're going to have all the damage from the fist smash and like the Unleashed Flame at the exact same time. Or like if you have the lightning guy, someone's going to get stunned, and if that's the healer who's halfway through a trank cast, like so many bad things can happen. So you need to try and kill as many of the Quillen as possible before the first fist smash. So the kill priority order, obviously you kill Damren first because you have the most time on him. Like you can almost kill him before the others even land. You then want to go and kill fire, and then you want to kill lightning. Now, when the boss does do his first fist smash, the chances are that you still will have lightning up. He should be low or almost dead, but you know, there is a chance that he will still be up. And this is probably one of like the deadliest ones, like the very first one. For this first one, you want to try and use as many raid cooldowns as possible. However, you don't want to burn like your whole arsenal. You want to use stuff like, if you have a Boomkin, you want to use his trank. People want to use their own personal damage reductions and health stones if you have them, all that sort of shit. And then once the lightning guy has died, you literally just have to deal with the boss, and that's it. Just the boss and his fist smashes.
Now, it's important as, really ranged, that you don't run into the boss as soon as he does start doing his fist smashes, because otherwise it's just going to you're just going to spread the arcing lightning everywhere. So, really, you cannot group up unless you don't have that arcing lightning on you, because if you take that into melee and then that goes on the tank who's already been butchered anyway, that's going to be bad. So just make sure that you really, really don't do that. When you do go in as well, just make sure you don't take it off of someone as you run in as well. That's also a very, very bad thing to have happen. Otherwise, really, this whole phase is, can you kill the boss before he gets too crazy and kills you, really? Because he just starts doing, of course, increasingly more and more damage, and his fist smashes start hurting more and more. That's why you really can't blow your whole arsenal of healing abilities straight at the beginning. That's what we did on our kill, and it was scary as hell. We had like people jumping into bear form and using all their defenses and stuff like that, so it's really, really bad idea. So before you even get to that phase, you want to be communicating who's going to be using what cooldowns and at what point, so you do have a cooldown at least for every single fist smash that does come up. This fight is actually really quite easy. It's quite a DPS check, but not a ridiculous one. That's why we kind of suggest that you can do this really quite early in your heroic progression, like number 5 instead of doing it 10th or anything like that, unless you're boss and you can just get all the way to it anyway. But you don't have to do it like when it comes up. You can do it at any point during your progression. You shouldn't have too much of an issue.
So thanks for watching, guys. If this guide helped you out, please do drop us a like. Helps us out quite a lot, and we'll see you for our next guide.
Thank you for watching.